Alright guys, welcome in. I am the Kodiak, and today we're going to be talking about the dude who can't stop dancing on teams' logos in the middle of the field. We are going to be talking about JuJu Smith-Schuster, wide receiver, Pittsburgh Steelers. This man has been a hot topic in recent days, in recent weeks actually, but last night was just a whole nother level of clowning. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who were 11-2 coming into the game, lost to a Bengals team that was without Joe Burrow, who has basically been the focal point of their offense all year. He's been carrying them, and they've looked just absolutely terrible without him. There is zero excuse for a team that is 11-2 to lose to a division rival who was starting Ryan Finley at quarterback, who, I don't know if you guys remember, but last year he was really bad. The Steelers were 11-0 at one point this year, but everybody knew that they had been carried by an easy schedule. I still personally thought they were a good team, just not as good as their record indicated. Well, based on the last 3 weeks' performance, losing to the football team, just getting stomped by Buffalo on Sunday Night Football, and of course last night when the whole country was watching, it was prime time. This was your chance to show the country that you're legit, that you can take care of a bad team. Well, they can't even do that. They beat Jacksonville 27-3, and that feels like a lifetime ago. This Steelers team is not good. I know they're dealing with some injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but their defense hasn't been a problem this year, and it really hasn't been a problem within the past few games. Their offense keeps putting them in really bad spots, and then the defense is just like, well, what the hell do you want me to do about it? The Steelers do not have a run game at all, and I don't know if that's partially due to the fact that they lost Mike Munchak, who was the architect of a very, very, very good Steelers O-line that basically Le'Veon Bell was running behind, and he won all sorts of awards, and then he suddenly became the worst running back in the league when he left that O-line. I don't think James Conner's bad. I actually think he's a pretty decent football player, but considering how easy running backs are to replace, and considering his injury history, he beat cancer in college, and kudos to James Conner, because that is not an easy feat to beat cancer and become an NFL player in any capacity, no matter the position. Listen, a backfield of James Conner, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, and Anthony McFarland does not strike fear into anyone. I personally believe the most talented back in that backfield is Anthony McFarland, but regardless, I will literally never understand the obsession with NFL teams like the Steelers and giving guys like Benny Snell the ball on 4th and goal or Jalen Samuels. Here's the thing, even though the Steelers have literally zero talent at the running back position besides 2 guys, and literally no O-line compared to what it used to be with Mike Munchak, their offense has been awful this year. And you can look at this year and just say, wow, anomaly, they were playing some good teams, they just woke up one day, suddenly they weren't good. I mean, that's kind of how 2020 has been working. You don't really know what you're going to get on a day-by-day basis. But the Steelers have had issues playing down to competition for years now. It hasn't just stopped with 2020. Going back even 2 years ago to the point where they started 7-2-1 and missed the playoffs, it was because they played down to a boatload of teams. Case in point, my Broncos got the biggest win since Super Bowl 50 in the franchise when they defeated the Steelers in Week 12 in 2018. Going into that game, the Broncos knew they were going to fire Vance Joseph on the first chance they got. Going into that game, we also knew that the Steelers were 7-2-1 and fighting for a playoff spot with Baltimore and basically a rookie Lamar Jackson right up their ass. What happens to Pittsburgh? Well, they just can't stop playing down to their competition. They lost to us. They blew a massive lead against the Chargers, which was huge if there was any sort of wild card race between the two teams. They also lost to the Raiders, which was incredibly pathetic considering the Raiders were a 4-win team. I don't know why my camera's doing this. Hold on. Case in point, they lost a lot of games to teams they shouldn't have that year, and it's just basically continued from there on out. And last year, we thought the Steelers, after Ben got hurt, were going to be like 0-16, but they actually showed quite a bit of resilience. The Steelers, when you think about it, they're not a franchise that has to be resilient at all because they're usually a pretty good team. They have the whole Steeler way, which is bullshit, but that's a discussion for another day. Last year, they went 8-8 with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph playing at quarterback. Trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick basically saved their entire season. They were carried by an elite defense, and the discussion coming into this year was, could they compete with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, which they beat Baltimore twice, but one of those was a complete fluke game where Lamar Jackson was not even in. Oh yeah, and they also played down to the Ravens in that game too. And here's the deal, Ben looked fine for the first half of this year, but over these past few weeks, he just looks washed. The dude looks like a 38-year-old quarterback coming off a ton of injuries. That organization as a whole is just so loyal to Ben that I don't envision them saying, even if uh, Ben comes back for another year, I don't envision them saying, okay, let's get a new quarterback. Because even with all the off the field stuff Roethlisberger's had to deal with in his career, the Steelers organization has stuck behind him. And we can say with confidence that Ben Roethlisberger is probably a piece of shit off the field. But Steeler way and all that. And this is basically Ben's team until he's forced to retire. So moving away from the leader of men that is Ben Roethlisberger, we are now going to talk about JuJu Smith-Schuster. JuJu Smith-Schuster came into the league when he was 19 or 20. I can't remember. I know he was really, really young, and he passed the eye test from day one. When he was 21 and turned 22, he put up 1,400 yards. That is an unheard of number for a sophomore wide receiver in the NFL. Shit, when I think about the guys who are maybe going to pass that this year, maybe DK Metcalf, and that's it. And people were labeling JuJu Smith-Schuster as the next big thing at wide receiver. He has a huge social media presence because in the 2018 going into 2019 offseason, people were just like, oh my god, JuJu's so likable. There's just a gigantic circle jerk all across social media about how everyone loved JuJu, how he was the most relatable NFL player, how he's so awesome. Here's the deal. JuJu has turned into more of a media presence than a player. Last year, in the 2019 season, he had 552 yards. I know the Steelers were rolling out literal trash cans at quarterback. But if you had asked me this past offseason who I thought was the most overrated player in the NFL, I would have said JuJu Smith-Schuster. Now, I would definitely say JuJu Smith-Schuster. The other side of the argument was, well, he put up 1,400 yards as a sophomore. You can't be too bad if you do that. Well, it just turns out that JuJu Smith-Schuster is the third best receiver on his own team now. Going back to the end of last year, he has been outplayed by Deontay Johnson. And ever since Chase Claypool entered the league, yeah, I know he popped off for a few games or so and really hasn't done much since, but at least he showed that ability to the point where he can win Steelers weeks. In all Steelers games this year where Deontay Johnson did not leave early due to injury or did not play due to injury, so whenever Deontay and JuJu are basically both healthy and on the field, Deontay Johnson has out-targeted JuJu Smith-Schuster in all games but one. It should be very obvious who the alpha is in Pittsburgh, and whether or not you want to agree, I mean, the target numbers basically speak for themselves. The Steelers, their coaches, and most importantly, Ben Roethlisberger, all view Deontay as the alpha receiver. He gets all the targets. JuJu Smith-Schuster has zero outside ability. You think about the guys who do the dirty work on the outside, it's Chase Claypool, it's Deontay Johnson. JuJu Smith-Schuster is a slot guy who's mediocre at best and been outproduced this year by some mediocre names. Last year, I still thought he was a very good player, albeit overrated, but I still thought he was going to just be amazing with Ben back. But here's the deal. In a year where the Steelers' rush offense is literally non-existent, so they have to throw the ball around 50 times a game, JuJu Smith-Schuster is not even going to hit 1,000 yards. Deontay Johnson has better receiving stats than JuJu Smith-Schuster does, and guess what? Deontay Johnson basically missed half his games or left half of them due to injury. So we need to talk about Pittsburgh this year because this doesn't just stop with JuJu, it spreads to the whole team. So week 1 against the Giants, they play on Monday Night Football on primetime, and they don't have a very good first half, but they end up taking care of business. Like I said, I think Pittsburgh -6 was probably the most generous line I have seen all season to the other team because I thought week 1 the Giants were just going to get run out of their own stadium. Week 2, they barely beat the Broncos, who lost Drew Lock in the first quarter due to an injury, and Jeff Driscoll was still driving them down the field towards the end. Week 3, after watching Deshaun Watson go up and down the field with ease for the first 2 quarters of the game, the Steelers changed their plan. They beat the Texans. They take care of them. Next game was against the Philadelphia Eagles, and this was pre-Jalen Hurts, so a 38-29 final score is not as ideal as it would have been if we knew how everything was going to turn out. By the way, Travis Fulgham this game. 10 receptions, 152 yards, and a tug. They beat Cleveland 38-7, and that's the only time they've really taken care of business when they needed to against a good team. They beat Tennessee 27-24. Now, this sounds good, but because Tennessee's a good team in their own right, but if you guys remember, they actually had a huge lead and ended up blowing it due to A.J. Brown. 28-24. They get run all over by Baltimore, but they end up squeaking out the win. They barely beat a Garrett Gilbert-led Cowboys team. They were 11-0 at this point. Their first loss this year came to the football team, who was starting the ghost of Alex Smith as quarterback. Now, considering the fact that Alex Smith has played one half of a year of exciting football, that is incredibly pathetic to think about, that they lost to a shell of Alex Smith. Then they get dunked on by Buffalo, and this was when all the shit started with JuJu Smith-Schuster. Josh Allen was quoted as saying after the game, "Let them do all the dancing, we're going to do all the work." All throughout this past week, the Steelers were getting clowned ever since that Bills game, but this just takes it to a whole nother level. So last night, JuJu Smith-Schuster posted a TikTok before the game. I can't remember exactly what the bottom text of the TikTok said, but it was just like, "Oh, they told me not to express yourself. I don't listen to them," or something along those lines. I don't know. I refuse to go back and watch that TikTok. If you're an NFL player and dancing on logos and making TikToks is your way of expressing yourself, that is incredibly pathetic. He has 2.7 million followers on TikTok. He has 3.4 million followers on Instagram. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I'd be willing to bet that's at least top 5 as far as both platforms. And like I said, kudos to him for building up a loyal fan base and everything, because I know he does a lot of live streaming and stuff like that. And he does cater to a lot of the younger fans who watch the NFL. I'm not afraid to say this, and I hope JuJu Smith-Schuster ends up seeing this video. JuJu Smith-Schuster is not good enough to dance on the logos of teams at midfield, much less when you're losing 27-17 to a team that does not have Joe Burrow at quarterback. The Steelers are not good enough to be making TikToks in the locker room. And I might be sounding like a get off my lawn guy right here, but this is not something that championship teams, let alone good teams, do. Do you think the Chiefs were celebrating in the locker room in Miami last year after they beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl making TikToks? I know Patrick Mahomes' brother was, but if there's one team who has earned the right to dance on logos this season, it is the Chiefs. It is the defending Super Bowl champions. In my video about the Tennessee-Baltimore game that happened this year, you'll know that the Titans stood on the Ravens' shield and disrespected the hell out of them, and they ended up winning the game. You know why? Because the Titans are a top 3 team in the AFC. They're good enough to go into Baltimore, where they won last year in the playoffs, and say, "Okay, this is our house." And then the Ravens, they did what they always do in big games with Lamar Jackson. They choked. But regardless, the Steelers have not earned the right to make TikToks. They have not earned the right to dance in the middle of the field. If I'm wrong and the Steelers win the Super Bowl, which is going to be awful considering how many TikToks JuJu and Claypool are going to make, then yeah, you've earned all the right in the world to make as many TikToks as you want. But this stems from a bigger problem. I personally think Mike Tomlin is at least a top 5 coach in the NFL. And I don't know what he thinks his job is at this point, to just babysit the Kardashians. Bell lit up JuJu last night so close to midfield, and I think it was very symbolic of the way it's been going this year for the Steelers. Until you prove that you're good enough to win the Super Bowl, you can't be dancing on logos at midfield. Like JuJu says, that's how he expresses himself, but that is incredibly pathetic. If I was Tomlin in those Steelers meeting rooms right now, I'd be showing JuJu's TikTok on the screen. And then I'd just be like, "Okay, you guys want to do shit like this? Yeah, that's why we're playing like garbage the past 3 weeks. Figure it out, or we will be one and done in the playoffs." If a very, very, very strong Colts team goes into Pittsburgh this week, and assuming Cleveland wins this week against the Jets, which they should have no problem doing, even though the Jets just beat the Rams, I don't see how the Browns lose this game. Week 17 in Cleveland is going to be for the division crown. You are not going to win that game if this stuff continues. The Browns are hot right now. You want to keep doing stuff like this? Go ahead. Nobody's going to stop you. JuJu and Pittsburgh as a whole has not earned the right to be doing stuff like this. Alright guys, that is going to do it for the video. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're not already. Follow me on Twitter. Link is in the description down below. Anyways guys, have a good day and peace out.